That would be really nice if we could just exist without having to explain ourselves or.
In the course of a lifetime, a healthy person could easily consume up to 100,000 pills.
I mean, this is just a staggering amount of drugs. It's important to say that some of these drugs do good. They save lives, they make you feel better. But they can all do harm, all of them.
That's about energy. And this energy is you. And this energy is the one that when it's altered, you get disease. When it is normal and very nicely balanced, you are healthy. Now, this is the concept of Ayurveda. Ayurveda doesn't say there is a disease, you treat it. No. It says, swastasya swastha rakshitam. Preserve the wellness of the healthy, which is very easy, cheap, and more profitable than treating a disease. But the Western medicine is after money. And for everything, we want money, we want to collect money, and we want to make money. And make money is our now problem.
Sup, welcome back to Background Voice with me, Lax. In each episode, I will discuss a topic that comes into my mind. Originally, this was in a podcast format where I would basically talk to you and you would listen to my jumbled brain dump while you were going on your commute, while you're doing your chores, or you just listened because you wanted to hear what I had to say. But now we are much more sophisticated because I actually have footage and I'm getting some editing skills. Not very good at the moment, but we'll grow. We'll get there. So yeah, this is Background Voice. Before we get started on today's episode, there are two very important buttons that you need to click. The first one looks like this. The second one looks like this. Oh, and I do have an Instagram at Background Voice Podcast, so go check that out as well. Right, on with the show. I hate going to the doctor. Every time I go, there is just this massive sense of anticipation and anxiety as to whether I will need to give blood or if I'll be stabbed by a needle. Because of that, I tend to try my best to use as many home remedies or cultural medicines as possible, because if it was good enough for my ancestors, it's good enough for me, right? Right? And to be honest, so far I would agree with that. I have personally felt a lot better from using things like Kai Marindu, which literally just means hand medicines in Tamil, which is just a variety of different spices, herbs, vegetables, concoctions that are used to help with whatever ailment you might have or whatever issue you might have. And these tend to give me a lot better relief over prescribed medication. I don't know, maybe it is a placebo effect, but I definitely feel a lot better whenever I use them. And I think a lot of this is because a lot of the time prescribed medicines tend to make me feel a little bit drowsy. Sometimes I do get side effects from them. And also just having to kind of stick to the strict routine of taking them at a specific time just gives me a lot of stress and anxiety, and I feel like it really does get in the way of my life. But that might just be a me problem. But one thing that I found was, despite feeling a lot of genuine relief and help from using my traditional medication and like traditional methods, it does have quite a bad rep here. And I've always found that really strange because it's kept generations of many, many different cultures going. So why is it considered bad? And why do people think that it just doesn't work? Don't get me wrong, I do think for certain things, you do need to have like strict evidence, decisive evidence-based medicines and practices, such as if you were to have cancer or if you had some sort of heart issue that requires a stint, or, basically you do need to have a sense of judgment, but not everything requires this strict regimen. Not everything requires having modern medicine, because some things can actually be solved or worked through with lifestyle changes or more natural remedies. And I do want to add, before anyone starts typing away saying that I don't believe in science, I do believe in science. My degree was in STEM and I work within the STEM field, and I do have a lot of faith in science itself. And I do think a lot of these, methods and medicines from like the West are effective. Like they do the job, they get the job done, and that's why people tend to take them. However, I do think we have become very, very reliant on quick fixes when there are certain things that could be solved or treated with lifestyle changes. And that is a real shame, because we still don't really properly know what the long-term effects would be from having like constant medical intervention. There was a documentary by Dr. Chris Van Tulking where he looked at the prescriptions given by GPs and looked to find alternative approaches to make patients less reliant on drugs. Quite a few of the GPs he interviewed during the documentary mentioned their patients felt like they weren't getting proper treatment if they weren't prescribed something for their ailment. Dr. Van Tulking then took a few patients from different categories to see if a more holistic approach would yield better outcomes. These changes included things like exercise for those with diabetes to control their blood sugar levels, or a series of activities to reduce reliance on antidepressants. The experiment found that these lifestyle changes actually helped a lot more. I will link the documentary in the description box below as well for anyone that would be interested in watching it. It is a multiple episode series, so yeah, it's quite an interesting watch. And that's one thing that this documentary kind of made very clear to me, was we're so obsessed with just quick fixes, with taking whatever pill or injection will get us to where we want to be, rather than taking precautions and changes in our lifestyle that, will take a little bit longer, but they will get us there, and it will reduce our reliance. And to be honest, it is, because it's a habitual change, like a change in a habit, it will end up most likely, hopefully, helping us a lot more in the long run and preventing any further issues from happening. And that's one thing that I've also noticed quite a bit with Western medication. A lot of the time we're more focused on treatment rather than prevention, while Indigenous medication is more focused on prevention, lifestyle changes, a very holistic approach to try and make sure that the disease, ailment, whatever it is unlikely to happen, or when it does happen, it won't happen at a faster rate than it kind of needs to take place in. And that's reminded me actually of a conversation that we had at uni back when I had to do this project management course. And in that, we were looking at an article about the pharmaceutical industry and how, of course, the pharmaceutical industry, can't say it, but the pharmaceutical industry is a industry. It's focused on profit, it's focused on making money, and because of that, they're obviously going to put more research and more time and more money into things that they know will make them a bigger profit at the end. And they know that treatment will make them more profit than preventative measures, because people don't really care about the ailment or the issue until it becomes their issue. So yeah, something to bear in mind. And also, because of that, a lot of Indigenous medicines usually come with like a statement of there is not definitive proof to show that this works. But a lot of the time, they actually aren't studied enough, and they don't have enough funding and not enough research is actually done on them, because it's not as profitable as selling pills and injections and things like that. So it's always something to bear in mind, because not having definitive evidence doesn't necessarily mean it's been disproven. It's just they haven't either done the correct tests to see if it's effective, or not enough funding is available for them to do enough tests to actually study it properly. I grew up with a lot of natural remedies and my mum making a variety of concoctions, a lot of which tasted absolutely disgusting. Really, really bad. No offense on that. And if ever I had a really bad headache, my grandma would massage medicinal tiger balm into my forehead, which would help relieve the pain a little bit. I would generally try not to take painkillers whenever I would have migraine episodes. My mom, whenever I was ill, would make a drink of whichever herbs and spices would help with whichever symptoms I was experiencing. And also, whenever I have my common occurrence of bad back pain, then I would go to my local acupuncture lady and she would put the needles in the right place that helped me move my neck again and make me not want to cry. So that's good. These are medicines and methods that I grew up on, and the last time I checked, I'm alive. And I would say that I'm pretty healthy as well. So, it's kind of working for me. Of course, I do use Western medicines, like modern medicine, Western modern medicines. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, but I still do use them. Like, I do go to the GP if I need to go to the GP, and I do take medication if I do need to take medication and I don't have any other options. But a majority of my health is based on natural and just trying to lead a better lifestyle to just reduce the chance of getting anything that could affect me in the future. Eastern medicine tends to look at the whole human rather than just the symptom. It aims to look at the lifestyle through things like movement, diet, and the mind. And a lot of Eastern practices do identify that these are all connected. Lately, there's been a lot more emphasis on mental health, which is great. This is something that was recognized thousands of years ago with Eastern and Indigenous practices, back when this wasn't even considered a thing here in the West. There's lately been more emphasis on practices like yoga and meditation to try and help with mental health, to try and reduce stress levels, and to try and keep people a little bit calmer with how hectic life has become these days. And within things like Ayurveda, keeping your mental health at optimum levels is considered key in order to keep your physical health at optimum levels, because you cannot have one without the other. They exist in a balance. And now we have more evidence showing that stress can lead to a lot of different physical health issues. So, I would say they have the right idea, and they've been having the right idea for quite a while. But a lot of these Indigenous practices are viewed as rubbish and they're frowned upon, and they're viewed as magical, airy fairy practices that don't actually work. And that confuses me, because I personally find that it works for me, and I know a lot of people that have found that it works for them. So why is it viewed like this? And I think a very big reason why it's frowned upon is because there isn't a good or deep understanding from Western cultures of these practices, which is understandable. Like, if you haven't grown up with it, probably not going to understand it as much as those who have grown up with it and who have experienced it from birth. But what's super sad is that a lot of these practices, so Indigenous medicines, as well as practices like yoga, just tend to be appropriated and taken and used for profit by people outside of that ethnicity that like to use it as a trend. Whether it be hot cupping, acupuncture, Ayurveda, crystal healing, etc., people are taking it as a trend and profiting off it. And although they must have some understanding of it to create an industry or like a company stemming off these practices. There's only so much a book can teach you. There's only so much like reading about it and watching someone do it can teach you. You really do need to get integrated into the practice, understanding it, get integrated into the culture as well, because a lot of these are very much rooted in cultures. So I find it very interesting how people can suddenly just switch and turn it into a massive industry, massive companies as well, and profit off of it. And thus, I find it really hard to believe that they're fully embracing the practices themselves and they're fully embracing the cultures that those practices stem from. And on top of this, a lot of companies like to use ancient practices, indigenous medicines, so on and so forth, as a marketing tool. Like a lot of beauty products, whether they be shampoo, body lotion, makeup, like to say things like inspired by ancient Indian practices, or playing the same flute track in every single commercial. But when you actually turn the product around and actually look at the ingredient list, you'll find that a majority of the ingredients included in it are actually just chemicals, with like a grain of turmeric, which they can use to state that the product actually has turmeric in it and that you're going to get the benefits of turmeric, even though there might not actually be enough turmeric to give you those health benefits. As you can see, I'm quite annoyed by that. Or when there is a new health fad, every single supermarket, restaurant, shop ends up selling these ingredients. And all these miracle ingredients are meant to be so beneficial and so helpful. But the thing is, a lot of these ingredients that might have come from Ayurveda or Chinese medicines or, whichever indigenous practice it is, usually there are actually strict rules as to how you should take it, when you should take it, what you should take it with, if you should take it on an empty stomach or if you should take food with it. And it's usually considered effective if it's used in conjunction with like another ingredient. There is a lot to it. But what ends up happening is within a lot of products and within like supermarkets, so on and so forth, they end up oversimplifying it just so they can market it and make people want to buy it. And obviously it's misleading because they're trying to convince a consumer that they're going to get all these health benefits that you could get from this ingredient, even though you're probably not using it in either the right quantities or in the right way to achieve that benefit. Basically, it is the classic discrediting and dismissing of practices and things that stem from POCs, people of color. But it's considered cool, trendy, amazing, groundbreaking, changed my life when you end up having companies selling it off to you. When they sell you a watered down, soulless version of that practice. Same script, different situation. Suddenly all these practices and methods that were used to hate on people of color and used to call them uncivilized is now more accepted because it's been taken over and kind of resold by companies. Yeah. But once again, question whatever you're buying, where it's coming from, question whether it is actually authentic and whether it is actually being sold to you in the correct way by a person that actually knows what they're doing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy something from one culture from someone of another culture. It's more about the intent and whether they actually do intend to sell that with knowledge rather than selling it because it's profitable. But one thing that's even worse is that a lot of the cultures that these practices have been stolen from they don't want the validation. A lot of the time we just want to be left in peace and left to do our own thing, left to follow our own cultures without being hated and called uncivilized. Whether other cultures believe in our methods and our practices or not, we don't exactly want our traditions to be shunned and for it to be used as yet another tool to call us other and to demonize us. But at the same time, like I said, we don't necessarily want it to be validated. We just want to exist. And that would be really nice if we could just exist without having to explain ourselves. Or is that too much to ask? We tend to get put into the other category a lot of the time. And that's also the case for Indigenous and Eastern medicines because it's always considered an alternative medicine, even though it still is a very commonly used method practice for people from countries where those methods originated. So the thing is, a lot of this kind of dismissing of Eastern medicines and belittlement of Eastern medicines contributes to the belittlement and hate towards people of colour and people of those particular ethnicities, wherever that particular practice might have originated from. By saying things from our culture don't work in a patronising tone and kind of saying that it will never reach the level of Western medication and implying that it's not as good or as effective as modern Western medication, it basically emboldens the view held by those who already have a low view of minorities. It indirectly allows people to view us as less and as inferior because the thing is, the culture is linked to the people. Without the people, the culture wouldn't exist because the culture is created by the people. So by attacking our culture, it's just an indirect way of attacking us. But that's what's on my mind. What do you think?